değerlendirmeleri konuşacağımız ilk panelimizde moderatör olarak PAGÇEV yönetimi beni davet etti, sağ olsunlar. Elimden geldiğince toplantıyı aydınlatıcı bilgilerle donatılmış sunumlarıyla, misafirlerimizle size aktaracağız. Dünya üzerinde şu anda yaklaşık olarak 3240 yerleşik polimer plastik üretim tesisi çalışmakta ve yaklaşık 710 civarında da yeni proje lansmanı veya temeli atılmış, yatırıma dönüştürmeye başlatılmış dünyaya kapasite gelmektedir. Yani bunların bütün hepsini bir araya aldığınızda dünyada şu anda üretilen plastik ham madde tonajı 420 milyon tonlar seviyesinde ki bu ilerleyen dönemde büyüme gösterecektir. Geri dönüşüm oranı plastiklerde dünyada üretilen plastiklerin aşağı yukarı %8, %9 aralığında geri dönüşümü söz konusu oluyor. Ki bu da değer olarak baktığınızda 55 milyar dolara tekabül eden bir geri dönüşümden sağlanan bir finansal kıymet var. Global plastik tüketimi dünyada yıldan yıla aslında geçen 10-15 yıla bakarsak 8-8,5 civarında büyürken son 1-2 yıldır bu 3-3,5 oranında maalesef kaldı bildiğimiz nedenlerden dolayı. Ve bu süre içerisinde de bu %8-8,5 ortalamanın en büyük porsiyonu %60'a yakın kapasiteyle Asya bölgesi, Güneydoğu Asya bölgesi, özellikle de Çin. Dolayısıyla esasında ilave her yıl 30 milyon ton, 31 milyon ton kadar bir kapasite ilavesi gerekiyor. Ancak tabii öne geçirdiğimiz son 2-3 yıldır özellikle Rusya-Ukrayna savaşından beri daralan ekonomiler, dünya pazarlarında sıkıntılar yaşandığı için de kapasiteler bize şu anda ilave gelen bu kapasiteler tehdit gibi gözükmekte. Aslında Asya'nın büyümesini göz önüne alırsak orta dönemde, orta vadede her şey yerine oturacak. Dramatik olan bazı şeyler de Avrupa'daki plastiğin üretimi 2006'lı yıllarda aşağı yukarı %22 bir paya sahipken Avrupa günümüzde %12'lere düşmüş durumda ve Avrupa artık ithalatçı rolüne doğru ilerlemekte. Geri dönüşüm konusu 1987 yılında Birleşmiş Milletler'in bir yapılan toplantısında o zamanki Norveç Başbakanı Brundtland tarafından ortaya getirilmiş sirküler ekonomi ve çevre programı olarak tanıtılmıştı. Hatta bu programın adı da Brundtland programı planı olarak anlatılmıştı. O tarihten bu tarihe tabii bayağı inisiyatifler kullanıldı, bayağı kurullar olaya sahip çıktı. İçinde bulunduğumuz dönemde hafif bu çalışmaların sarsıldığını, biraz kuvvet kaybettiğini görüyoruz ama aslında her şey tekrar yoluna girecek ve geri dönüşümün ne derece önemli, ne derece sahip çıkılması gereken bir plan olarak devrede tutulması gereken unsur olduğu herkes tarafından vakıf. Ukrayna Savaşı'ndan sonra Avrupa'nın değişen enerji kaynakları ve enerji kaynaklarındaki yeni arayışları aslında sahip çıktığı bu geri dönüşüm programını, planını birazcık öteledi. Fosil kaynaklara tekrar geriye dönüş gözükmeye başladı. Günümüzde kadar plastiklerde ilk anından bugüne kadar üretilen toplam plastik kapasitesi 9,5 milyar ton olarak dünyaya getirilmiş ve bu 9,5 milyar ton şu an değişik yerlerde bulunuyor. Sadece 2 milyar ton, 2,3 milyar tonu bu zamana kadar geri kazanılmış. Yani hayal edin 7-7,5 milyar ton hala deniz içinde, karada, gömük veya kara üzerinde bu plastik duruyor. Aslında burada çok devasa bir kaynak var. Buna finansal olarak bakıp bir fırsat, insanlık için bir tehdit gibi de değerlendirmelerle bakabilmek mümkün. İşte içinde bulunduğumuz bu süreçte çevreye plastiğin etkilerini kontrol altında tutma zorunluluğu şimdi vereceğim bir iki rakamla da daha ciddi durumdadır. Şu an 400-420 milyon ton kapasitede bir üretim var diyoruz. Her yıl bu malzemeler üretiliyor ve tüketiliyor. 2030 yılına kadar bu kapasitenin 530 milyon tonlara geleceği öngörülüyor ve 2060 sonunda da bu rakamın, sıkı durun, 1,2 milyar ton plastik ham madde üretme kapasitesine dünyanın geleceği ve bu da bir eşdeğer olarak tabii otomatikman tüketme noktasına geleceğini düşünürsek ve bunun da ağırlıklı olarak hızlı tüketilen kısmı ambalaj. Yani ambalajın içerisinde anlık, saniyelik tüketim bütün dünya nüfusunu bir araya getirirseniz gerçekten çok endişe verici bir durum var. 1987'de bu Brundtland planını tanıtan Norveç'in başbakanı aslında o inisiyatifi kullanırken çok önemli bir sağduyuyla hareket etmiş ve görüyoruz ki bugün Norveç kendi başına dünyada sahip olduğu nüfusa göre tükettiği disposable plastikler dediğimiz yani bardak ve kaplarda en fazla, en yüksek geri dönüşüm oranını icra eden bir ülke. Oradan hareketle aslında bütün ülkelerin, bütün toplulukların bu paralelde ilerlemesi ve bu olaya sahip çıkması lazım. Ben bu konuda misafirlerimize, katılımcılara yavaş yavaş kendi konularında ihtisas sahibi oldukları, tecrübeli oldukları konularda sorular yöneteceğim ve onların görüşlerini almaya başlayacağım. İlk defa Sukano firmasından Pietro Simonetti dostumuza soruyu yöneltiyorum. Firmanız ağırlıklı olarak PET geri dönüşüme yönelik nitelik ve rheolojik modifikasyon sağlayıcı katkılar üretmektedir. Sadece PET değil tabii polikarbonat ve diğer polyester polimerleri de içinde görebiliriz.
Yeah, I think I can talk specifically more about PET as you said, and at Sukano we are more focused on polyesters. And you also mentioned a critical date that only 8 to 8.5% of the plastic worldwide has been recycled so far. And part of my presentation is actually there. Luckily in Europe we are doing a little better. We are around 40% and our effort is into meeting all the targets of the new regulation are imposing on us. We have a target of 50% for 2025, 55% for 2030. And specifically in PT, data looks more promising, more optimistic. And as Sukano as a company, we have in the market many products that enhance not only the mechanical properties of recycled material, also the processability of recycled material. That's how we see our role in the industry in order to support our customers and the entire value chain. Thank you very much for having me. As I said, today I'm representing Sukano. We are a family-owned business based in Switzerland. We are present worldwide with about 3 plants in 3 continents. And as our moderator already said, we are active in the manufacturing of additive and color master batches for mostly polyesters, but also biopolymers and other engineered resins. And today, I want to open my presentation with a few data about a total packaging waste generated in Europe. As you can see, per capita, so per person, in the last 10 years, this amount went up roughly 20% from around 155 kg to around 190 kg. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see that 40% of this 190 kg is essentially paper. And in the second place, you have glass and plastic that make each 20% of this 190. So let's put a label on plastic. Each person in Europe consumes and then generate waste for around 38 kilo per person per year. Now, if we zoom in into the plastic section of this quantity, so this 38 kg, I wanted to show you how we are doing in Europe. As I said before, we are doing relatively better than the rest of the world. The first column to the left is the average of the 27 countries in the EU. We currently recycle roughly 40% of the plastic waste that we generate. But as you can see, unfortunately, there is a huge disparity among the European countries. Let's say we have certain countries that are doing better, that are already around 55% recycling rate, but then there are other countries where we go down even below 20%. Also in this graph, I decided to set the two bars, which are essentially the target that the PPWR regulation is imposing on us. As you can see, we have a target of 50% for 2025 and 55% for 2030. As this graph clearly shows, only a few countries will be actually able to meet these targets, and for the others, there is still a lot to do. And yeah, we have to put up our sleeves and really go down to business. With this slide, I want to further zoom in into the situation with among all the mixed plastic, specifically about PET, that I said before, it's our core business. Not only in terms of the amount of material that is actually recycled, which it looks much, much better than all the other resins, but I would like to put the focus on how much recycled material we currently have in the PET-based packaging in Europe. So the last data available are from 2022, and as you can see, we have around 24-25% in bottles and 45% in trays. Also in this case, I decided to show you what the target from the PPWR are. In 2030 is 30% for both bottles and trays, which we will luckily meet, considering our current starting point. The target is more ambitious for 2040, mostly for bottles, where we will have to reach a recycled content of 65%. So as I said, from ambitious targets, of course, some challenges come with it. We as Sukano have identified the 4 main challenges, and now we can support the industry. The first one is definitely the quality of the recycled material that is available in the market, mostly in terms of consistency, if we talk food content application, and that's where Sukano, with our product, we not only improve the mechanical properties, the processability, but mostly we want to enhance the use of recycled material in the end application. The second challenge is definitely complying with the several global standards that are imposed on us, and our contribution is definitely supporting our customer in order to respect the designing for recyclability guidelines, and in the first place, make sure that our products are in compliance with these guidelines. The third challenge is about collection and sorting, and also in this case, there is a huge disparity among the EU 27 countries. Here I would like to spend a few roles on opaque application. That's where, with our color master batch, we make sure that opaque PET is still recognized as such, and therefore it doesn't end up in the mixed plastic stream, which of course has a lower market value. The fourth and last challenge that I want to mention is about regulatory compliance, not only in terms of meeting the target of recycled content, but also including the stringent degree of purity which is requested in mostly food-grade rPET. And our role in this case is avoiding a huge list of chemical substances that it gets updated every 3 to 4 minutes, and essentially establishing partnership with other players in the value chain. The only way we know as a company to support our customers and the entire value chain is investing in facilities, investing in our R&D. And today I would like to put the focus on our last effort, which is essentially consists in our in-house being able of replicating in-house the PEDCOR, the tray, Christian is here, tray circularity evaluation protocol, and also the PBP quick test. As you can see here, I highlighted in a darker color the steps of the test that we are actually able to replicate in-house. And as you can see, we are pretty much able to cover all the steps that involve the handling of the material. So from the shredding of the waste that is being collected until actually the manufacturing of the ending products. There are two steps which are missing, which is essentially the washing of the flakes and the sink and floating separation and the flake elutriation. And there is a reason why we decided to invest first as a first step into all other steps that you see highlighted here, and it will be more clear once I show you the temperature profile of the entire protocol. Essentially, I don't have the pointer here, or does it work? No, I will get closer. The washing and the air elutriation is essentially this part, and as you can see, these are two steps, are performed at temperature way lower than 100 degrees. So among all the steps, these are the less severe or impactful on the material. All the others that involve drying, melting, extruded, we are all able to cover, as you see. So how to translate this into a value for the entire value chain? So essentially being able to replicate the entire testing protocol, we can test any new material that we develop before actually launching them into the market. This is also applicable for most of our existing products that are already commercialized that you can find in the market. The very last slide, and then I leave space to the other member of the panel. This is essentially a brief overview of the portfolio of our products that I just mentioned, essentially. As you see, you can see melt viscosity enhancer to improve the processability of recycled material, impulse modifier to improve the mechanical performance of the rPET, color correction master batches to improve the visual appearance of the material, and then talking about opaque application, the NIR detectable colors that I said allow us to sort opaque PET as such. And we also wanted to give our contribution in terms of recycled content of the end application of the packaging material. Therefore, essentially, most of our products are also available on rPET carrier. So in case you add 1, 2, 3% of a master batch in your end application, this part of the resin will also be counted as rPET content. That was it. Thank you very much. Teşekkür ederim.
Recycling, geri dönüşüm, plastik geri dönüşümde kullanılan malzemeler tabii ki elleçlediğimiz plastiğin scraplerini, hurdalarını üst seviyelere taşımak için önemli katkılar ve değer ifade ettiği tartışılmaz. Beraberinde tabii ki makine ve ekipmanlar da gene konvansiyonel geri kazanım konusundaki yıllar içerisinde alınan yollarda o sektöre hizmet eden makine endüstrisi de büyük mesafeler kat etti. Bu konuda CMG firmasından Marco, sana bir soru geliyor benden. Plastikteki geri dönüşüm teknolojilerinin günümüz koşullarındaki daralan ekonomilerde daha fazla marj üretebilmek, rekabetçiliği arttırmak yönünden bakıldığında siz sektörünüzü sadece CMG olarak değil, sektörünüzdeki diğer unsurların katkılarını nasıl değerlendiriyorsunuz? Ve endüstrimizi gelecekte ne gibi artılar, değerler bekliyor sizler tarafından sunulacak? Endüstriye nasıl yenilikler getirmektesiniz? Bunları bize paylaşırsanız mutlu oluruz.
To tell you our experience in the recycling industry. So we consider that recycling, we call it, is endless resource. So plastic could be used and reused almost infinitely. That's why it's one of the most important material in the industry. This introduction, this presentation to tell you our view being a global supplier of granulator and single shaft shredder that are primary process machinery for the recycling industry. As a matter of fact, since we have been established in 1979, we have sold over 35,000 units worldwide, and a big percentage of them are still in operation. We are acting in various plastic sectors, thermoforming, extrusion, blow molding, injection molding, plastic recycling, but also in cable recycling. Why recycling? This is an analysis made back in 2022 regarding the demand of various polymers by the industry. With this analysis started back in 1983, and you can see the trend of the growth of the demand of polymers till 2030. On parallel, also the demand of recycled machinery is growing, and that's why CMG is focused to be more and more involved in the plastic recycling. From all over the world, Europe, Asia, Africa, etc., plastics is considered the second larger type of material to be recycled. And right now, according to the latest statistics, worldwide only 9% of plastic has been recycled. So all of us, we have a big future in front of that. Recycle, as is well known to almost everybody, is the best way to be green, use as less as possible raw material because the planet is limited on that. Limitation of natural resources and preservation of the environmental is expecting to grow in the entire world. That force the plastic industry to recycle. A quick view of the situation of plastic recycling in the various parts of the world. Here you can see some statistics that foreseen the market recycling growth from the situation that was fixed in 2023, about over 43,000 million, to grow about 8% in the next 8 years. That goes from 2024 to 2032. Also, the demand of plastic recycled is growing rapidly, and the industry has to follow up with that. That's also a boost because the environmental concern intensify around the world. So this is another reason why to recycle. Here in this diagram, you can see the expectation of plastic consumption in global area. In Europe, Latin America, North America, Africa, Middle East, etc. You can see the growth is constant everywhere. So that's important to be considered. In this second slide, as Sukan already presented before, you can see the situation specifically for Europe. what we recycle per kilos per habitant in the various European countries. And you can see that even if it's an average data, is not much of plastic, so we have still a lot to do. Of course, when we spoke in general about the plastic recycling, we should consider a lot of different material, because plastics is a word. There are plastic polymers that are easier to be recycled, or more than that, are easier to be collected and segregating, and others that are more complex. I would like also to have a quick section about why Turkey as a nation is important for the plastic recycling. You probably are aware that since China banned the import of plastics, especially for Europe, Turkey became the preferred destination for the plastic waste from EU. And by far, according to the last statistics, as you can see here, the majority of the plastic waste from Europe arrive in Turkey. Just a minor percentage goes to India, United Kingdom, and other countries. So that means that Turkey is a perfect country where to recycle, because you will have the possibility and the beauty to use plastics scrap as a natural resources to develop your industry and your business. Bottle recycling in the different market. Why bottle? Simply because bottles are containers, packaging that are mainly and easier to be recycled, segregated, and collected. Here, of course, bottles and containers may be of PET, polypro, or HDPE, and is expected to reach over 75,000 million value in 2033. So bottle recycling market expect to grow of 5% during those years. I will go quickly to make a view of the situation of the bottle recycling in various macro areas: North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, South America, and Middle East and Africa. This is graphically what is the expectation of the bottle recycling through the years for the various areas. And you can see that there is no area that don't foresee a growth into plastic recycling of bottles. Globally, according to the last statistics, the bottle recycling reached a percentage of 27% of the production. So that means that still there is a lot to go to recover all the bottles we produce worldwide. Of course, in some areas, this percentage has been beaten, so is more than that. But in other areas of the world is less than that. Again, according to the latest statistics, these are the expected growth area by area. For example, in the North America, the plastic bottles market supposed to grow of 4.5%. In Europe, even more, 4.8%, in spite of the fact that in Europe we have a big number of bottle recycling plants. South America also expect an even more growth in bottle recycling, up to 5.7%, thanks to the fact that they are starting to consider the bottles resources to be reused into the industry. Likewise, in the Middle East, they almost foreseen a 5% growth of recycling bottles. Africa is probably the area where, according to some analysis, our expectation as well, we foreseen the highest growth of recycling for bottles. As a matter of fact, we as CMG have been involved in more than a project to install the large recycling complex in Central Africa and South Africa. Plastics recycling, of course, is relatively simple, but according to our technology, the beauty of our machinery is that it gives a consistency of the dimension of the flakes produced. That's a big advantage for further operation like washing and re-extrusion. We have a very good cutting system, so not curled flakes that might stick together and make troubles during the feeding and reusing, lowest dust generation, and we maximize the percentage in size on a certain dimension. That helps the other process. Lower temperature to avoid the degradation of the polymer during grinding. Likewise, in parallel, also the food packaging is growing, and we are traditionally involved since decades in the thermoforming. So we also saw that many thermoformers will increase their recycling capacity. Also in this market, the trend is of a constant growth. You can see here that either for thin gauge or thick gauge, the use of polymers and consequently its recycling is supposed to constantly increase during the next coming years. In many cases, there is a mix of connection because in the thermoforming, often customers utilize also bottles, so they came from another process to be recycled and used into their packaging. Market growth is the expectation. The challenge is to make also the thermoform container more and more with recycled products. And the perspective is that also the industry and the market will accept more and more plastic recycled. Also a boost to this is the marketing awareness. So also the people that utilize the packaging are more and more concerned in using material that cannot be recycled. So plastic is a perfect material for that. In spite of the material composition, it's possible to recycle the thermoform container even if they are multi-layer. These are pictures of some of our applications for the recycling of the thermoforming containers for all kinds of plastics that reverse in quality flakes that can be reused into the extrusion of new material. That's all. Thank you very much.
Bizim esas içeride yaptırım gücünü tanımlayan devlet tarafından regülasyonların sivil toplum örgütleri tarafından bu regülasyonlara uyumun takip edilmesi çok çok önemli. Çünkü biz daha yolun sanki ülke olarak başındayız gibi gözüküyor. Hermes, sana bir soru göndermek istiyorum. Polyester ve PET rezin üreticilerinden biri olarak, hatta dünyadaki önemli kapasite sahiplerinden biri olarak geri dönüşüm konusunda regülasyonları nasıl değerlendiriyorsunuz? Konuya yönelik gözlemlediğiniz tehditler, gelişen zorluklar var mıdır? Bunlar bölgesel bir yapılanma gösterir mi? İlave bir konu da benim şahsi merakım. Özellikle PET polyester geri dönüşümünde giyim üzerine olan kumaşlarla endüstriyel teknolojik kumaşların trendi, gelişimi nasıl gidiyor? Bu konuda bizi aydınlatır mısın lütfen?
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be in this city with such a great history. And last time, I remember in a big conference in Istanbul, it was in 2019, actually, that we were discussing, at that time I was working for these guys in Europe, so for the bottled water industry in Europe, and we were pushing for the deposit refund system. Because we were discussing about recycling, but you cannot recycle something that you don't collect. So, and Turkey in particular, very similar to my native Greece, we were landfilling a lot of our waste. It was more than 80%. Not that the other countries, it was shown earlier, but not that the other countries are hugely higher on the recycling rate because they have incinerators. So the question is either incineration or landfill. Now, of course, we have the 10% landfill. Of course, some countries were given 5 years more, like Greece and others, that they were landfilling more than 80% to reach that level. But the point is not to go to incineration, to go to recycling and to utilize something that is very valuable resource. So, I'm Ermis Panagiotopoulos and I work for Indorama Ventures. For those who don't know, Indorama Ventures is the largest recycler in the world of PET, but also the largest producer, VPET producer in the world. So just very quickly, because you will be hearing a lot of speeches, a lot of numbers, a little bit tiring, I will try to make it not looking at the numbers, but giving the message on each slide. So here you see global presence, 117 factories all over the world, in every region. When I started almost 3 years ago, we had more plants, and especially in Europe. That's the message. In Europe, we are going backwards in terms of recycling plants. We haven't closed because we try very hard, but virgin plants, we closed. Why we do that? Because of not competitiveness in Europe. From every angle, if you are in, because we have, I will show you in the next slide, which is Çorlu, just outside of Istanbul, we have a plant, it's a virgin plant. If you are in Turkey, it's much better than if you are in Greece. In Greece, all the environmental legislation, I'm talking about Greece, not because I'm from there, but it's just on the borders. You need to comply with all the environmental legislation if you are in Greece. Some kilometers away, you don't need to comply. It's a choice if you comply or not. Like the food contact RPET is being pending for next year to be allowed, like it was earlier this year in India, for example. In China, they are having discussions. But all over the world, they are discussing about recycled PET. So it's the bright future of recycling is there. The point is that it's being promoted and not going backwards. Why I'm saying backwards? Europe, 2018, EU plastics strategy, pushing companies to use recycled content into whatever. We're talking about bottles, but in car, in the automotive industry, in every industry, use more recycled plastics than virgin. In Europe, we go back now, we say, no, no, no, waste hierarchy is avoidance. Then reuse. Then if you cannot avoid or reuse, then you go to recycling. So it's going backwards for the recycling in Europe because of environmental legislation, despite the 25% RPET from a single-use plastics directive, or the 65% in 2040 from packaging and packaging waste regulation that passed early this year. So, as far as the company is concerned, if you look at this picture, we are present everywhere. You can see the locations is the plants. If you add them, it's 117. In terms of the revenue, you can see the difference with the US. Less plants, more revenue. So the point there is you need to decide as well. In Europe, we decided to be dependent on energy from wherever. We used to be from Russia, then LNG from US. The US were buying natural gas in the past from Russia. Now they don't anymore because they have shale gas, the fracking. In Europe, we decided it's not environmental friendly, and that's true. It's not environmental friendly, but brings the price of energy down. So we are not competitive in Europe. And the competitiveness gap can be energy related, but also there can be raw materials that we are not competitive towards Asia or the United States. And that's the reason why we have some plant closures in Europe. Now, this comes back to the plant closures. EU legislation that I said in the beginning, you are some kilometers away from Turkey, you need to comply. Here, you don't need to comply. Look at this situation, how madness it is. And of course, the last 5 years there were some personalities that pushed the Green Deal perspective. Basically, if you were saying in the last 5 years in Brussels, I'm located in Brussels, in Belgium, I'm the lobbyist there. If you were saying that you come from industry, you were considered like, while if you were coming from an environmental NGO, all the doors were open. So, and that's not the business perspective that someone needs in order to invest money for a long term, not backwards. And in Europe, we know very well that for many legislations, we go one step, and then because of challenge from environmental NGOs, we go back. So now, clean industrial deal, apart from all this that you saw that we need to comply, I don't go because you will have the slides, a lot of legislation. We have the clean industrial deal that this February, 26th of February, in order to revive a little bit the EU industry, because they realize, even though it's the Ursula von der Leyen's second term, so basically going backwards on the Green Deal a little bit, we have how to foster the European industry and how to simplify as well. This is the simplification on the legislation that we create. Europe is second to none as far as environmental legislation is concerned. Drafting it, not necessarily implementing it. I still drink my, we call it Freddo Espresso or Freddo Cappuccino, is Italian name, but it's a Greek invention in a way on coffee, cold coffee. I still drink it with plastic straw, which should have been banned 4 years ago, following the Single-Use Plastics Directive. So it's not that we're implementing the legislation that we create, but for some companies, I see here that this bottle is not with tethered caps. While in Europe now, in European Union, not Europe, in the European Union, all the bottlers, and changing the caps in the lines of the production lines, it was a huge cost for them. So we are creating a lot of burdens inside in order to protect, and that's true that if the small cap is being lost in the sand, especially for touristic countries like Turkey as well, it's a little bit problematic for the fish and the whole life cycle that it will come to our food. But you create for your internal, in Europe, production, a barrier. That's the message. Now, as in Dorama Ventures, we are also, because I speak a lot about Europe and European Union, but we are also very present in the international fora. So this is COP29 and COP30 now in Belém in November. It's about United Nations framework of climate change. So it's the Conference of Parties, is the UN countries come together to discuss and to agree on a climate change globally. And we are present in every, from Egypt to Dubai to Baku and next in Brazil. Also in the Global Plastic Pollution Treaty, that for the producers it was pollution treaty, and actually this is how it's written, but for NGO point of view, and for some scientists, it was plastics treaty. So basically they wanted to cut production. And for us, we were favoring collection, like extended producer responsibility, EPR, or DRS. But this has been, normally should have been finishing in Busan, in South Korea, in December last year. Now we have a last go in Geneva in August. So we are present as Indorama Ventures and in the climate change, which is from fertilizers to car industry to every sector, not only packaging, but we are focusing also on the plastic pollution treaty. Now, I hope I didn't tire you a lot, but that's interesting. This is like a chess game. A chess game that I play with my 6-year-old son. I will win. There is no chance my 6-year-old will win me in chess. And that's what Europe is, my 6-year-old child. Why? You have the big players, and Europe, I'm talking about Europe, I'm talking about the European Union. You have US and China that they know how to play the game, and in my personal opinion, China knows much better how to play the game. There is a trade war, but not on this tariff war following Trump. Let's take before Trump. I'm not talking about Trump tariffs. Just before. You have the big players. US, what they did when they see the industrialization has a problem, what did they do? Energy. Let's go to the non-environmental friendly solution in order to drop the price of energy. What Europe did, we support Ukraine, but we don't know where to get the energy from. So we are a lot of philosophizing about how we want to be in the future without having the tools ourselves. And we are all, I'm talking about as a European, we are always asking for something from someone else. So we are dependent by nature. And now, that's why now we are running around. Concrete example. In order to produce PET, you need some things from fossil fuels, purified PTA and MEG, plus PIA and a catalyst in order to make the catalyst, in order to make the final resin of PET, we use antimony trioxide, but let's say antimony. Antimony is an EU critical raw material, is in the list of EU critical raw materials. China controls 55% of the global antimony. 55% of the global antimony is controlled by China. So, and what did they do? In September 2024, that's why I said, in my personal opinion, they know how to play the game very well. They did a ban or export restriction on antimony. What is the impact of that? I said 55% controlled by China, 45% by others. All the world needs to get the 45 pie, which supply-demand, higher price. So that means that all in Europe, we have the problem of much higher cost of, in order to make our resin, much higher cost. So this is raw material. Taking into account that energy, we are nowhere compared to US or China, what competitiveness we're talking about? So I will close with a positive, because that was a little bit of crying message, but unfortunately, for the last years, this is the message that I give, because I'm based where I'm based. Education. It's very important to have an education part as well, and that's what Indorama Ventures is doing with Yunus Foundation, because we said, you have, in parallel to the economic incentive, depository fund system, the fact that you put, since January, if I'm not mistaken, this here, it's very, very important, and actually, you don't need education, because when it's painful in the pocket, it will be done. So, education in parallel is very important. And what is this? It's an open source. WasteHeroEducation.com is a teaching materials from teachers to school kids from kindergarten to university. In university, you speak about SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. In kindergarten, you speak that this goes here, this goes here, simply. So it's a very good open source, and my company was promoting that all over the world with high results of reaching out for almost 400,000 people. So with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the organizers for inviting Green Dot to present what we believe is important for the future on the circularity of the plastics industry. I've been myself very much involved in this over the last 30 years in a different capacity. I was the managing director of the European Plastics Converters Federation, which had about 50,000 companies converting plastics, recycled plastics and virgin plastics. And I was managing the European Plastics Recyclers Organization also for 20 years. So I've been seeing the evolution over these 3 decades, how the plastics industry basically had evolved, and knowing that you have to move from recycling also to full circularity if you want to survive and decarbonize the industries in Europe, something Europe needs, but something the planet needs as well. I joined Green Dot more than 2 years ago, basically because I wanted to live by myself how circularity would be possible. Having been talking with politicians for 30 years, you realize you remain very theoretical on many, many aspects. So I wanted to go deep dive into how can we really push for full circularity. Green Dot's role, some of you know Green Dot as the licensing symbol. It's the oldest EPR system in the world. It was created early 90s during the unification of Germany, where the Western German were used to dump in East Germany most of their waste. With unification, a solution needed to be found. And Klaus Töpfer, which was the environmental minister, basically decided to set up an extended producer responsibility scheme, so giving the industries a chance to organize these systems. At the beginning, Green Dot was the only actor in Germany, serving 80 million consumers. Today, after 30 years, the Green Dot, which is a privately owned system, is amongst the 10 operating systems which are profit-based systems. Often we associate EPR with non-for-profit. There is a slight difference in this. We believe that getting access to feedstock through licensing of packaging allows us as well to continue to invest in the next levels and the assets which are required. So we see ourselves as really an orchestrator of the value chain of licensing companies which are putting packaging on the market, ensuring that everything is being collected, properly sorted, and back to recycled. And on recycling side, we go for pure mechanical recycling, where it makes sense, and we advanced recycling or even go to pyrolysis or chemical recycling activities. This is where our company is moving forward. This is an example of how we incorporated the post-consumer household waste into transport packaging with some of our clients, where we reached up to 20%. Now, some may say this is low because we don't reach yet the 30%, but we are talking really about the bad household waste quality, which is being collected separately in the lightweight fraction in Germany. We're not talking here about industrial packaging waste, but purely post-consumer material. One slide about Germany. As I said, Germany started in the 90s with EPR systems. And you see here how advanced we are and what the targets are for 2030 in terms of recycling rates. This chart basically indicates that even if you have 10 systems competing with themselves, amongst themselves, in a country of 80 million people, you can reach extremely high recycling rates. The objective is even go beyond the 68% rate that we have achieved in 2023 and to go to 80% towards 2030. For that, of course, additional feedstock needs to go more to recycling. And looking at the objectives which have been set by the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation, it's evident that we need to take out of the streams which is still going to incineration in Germany. This is where we focus on. We focus on pre-treatment of material, move the feedstock from incineration to chemical recycling, pre-treatment and pyrolysis plants. With it, we are able to supply pyrolysis oil to naphtha crackers in Germany, other parts of Europe, in order to produce circular polymers. So this is basically our business model. This slide is showing just a project we had with PepsiCo, how we orchestrated the whole supply chain, moving from using Plastics Energy as technology provider. We then moved the produced pyrolysis oil to Ineos. They made sure that Irplast was making the first polypropylene film, laminated at Amcor, and sold to PepsiCo. So this is just an example of many which are taking place right now in order to prepare the future requirements of the legislation in 2030. I would have liked to show a video, but I think maybe just to indicate if there is a link, we can show the video, which is a video on our sorting facility that we have invested in Austria, which gives you an idea on how complex sorting is today, but how complex it has to become if we need to define and segregate the waste streams according to the different polymer types. This is extremely important if we really want to move forward on the recycling content targets for each kind of polymers. I understand there is no possibility to show the video.
Earth and a flat surface here. We, however, see a blank slate. From the very beginning, we had a clear vision to make history here. In 2023, we entered a new era of plastic recycling and began constructing a plant of the superlative, unparalleled in Austria and throughout Europe. The location in the heart of Europe, at the upper Austrian port of Enns, allows threefold transport connections via road, railway, and by ship. On site, we focused on sustainable materials and a largely energy self-sufficient line operation. The result is Europe's most modern plastic sorting plant, a digitized high-tech wonder equipped with sensors and artificial intelligence, capable of sorting 100,000 tons of plastic waste per year into over 20 raw materials. With this sorting depth, we significantly contribute to achieving recycling quotas, not only in Austria, but throughout Europe. Doing so, we provide a central element for a successful circular economy and take joint responsibility for our environment and future generations. The know-how of our employees is at the very heart of our company. Their passion, dedication, and tireless efforts make it all possible and lead us to success. Today, we are not just standing in front of a plant, but we are looking at a milestone of our mission for a more sustainable future. All thanks to the cross-border recycling partnership of ARA, Werniger, and Green Dot. Tree Plast, sorted for a better future.
Yes, thank you. So the video indicates where we believe investments have to take place in the years to come in order to reach the objectives of the packaging and packaging waste regulation. Technologies exist, they are there. Feedstock needs to be handled, feedstock needs to be treated, feedstock needs to be fine-tuned in order to drive this circularity. We heard from Ernest how depressing the mood is in Europe right now, and he's right. I was in Amsterdam a couple of weeks ago, where the opening statement of the president of the Plastics Recyclers Europe Federation was, by 2030, you will have 50% less recyclers in Europe than today. As a president of a European organization, I was shocked listening to these kind of phrases. But things are changing. Restructuring is taking place. And Europe, which is today the only attraction pole, because we created a market for recycled content. It's the only market in the world that was created. That should not stay like this. That should change. We should develop regional circularity hubs. So my plea to the European Commission is export what you're good at, export the knowledge of the regulations you have set up. Maybe some adjustments will be needed, because Ernest is right. We have gone too far in terms of administration, reporting, and bureaucracy. But 80% of what was done is good. It's good for the planet, it's good for the environment, it's good for society, and it's good for business. So my plea really is, and I hope to see in 5 to 10 years, mandatory recycled content in other regions of the world. India is starting. I hope Turkey is going to do the same. Because if you believe that Turkey will only be manufacturing to export back to Europe, I think it's the wrong choice. I think it's important to create this circularity in Turkey as well, and that needs to be driven by legislation. The same applies with food contact. We need to make sure similar regulations take place in other parts of the world. When it comes to what the European Union should be doing, because there's a lot of pressure today coming from industry to the European Union, how to protect the European assets, how to protect the European infrastructures. We could, for example, add under the CBAM regulation, which is the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, we could include recycled polymers and make sure that whenever you import recycled polymers from certain countries, equal games are being played. Yes, we have high energy costs. We have to balance this again, because Europe needs, as they don't have their own natural resources, they need to develop a circular economy. And they need, and they will, in my view, protect it for the future. When it comes to your question, certification is key. Reliability is key. We have been developing several certification schemes already since a couple of years, and I think that needs to continue. So making sure that the right certification schemes are being put in place, and making sure that we have the right auditors to control these certification schemes. This is even more challenging, because often we get auditors which do not have any experience of the plastics industry controlling plastics factories. This is something also that needs to change. So I'm very happy that Certiloop is developing in this direction. I'm very excited to see how Certiloop can also move in the other way. Certiloop is a part of Polycert Europe, which is also developing different schemes, also for the PET food contact, together with Petcore, and this is very important for the future. And finally, my last point, I said it already before, we need to stimulate in the world regional circularity hubs. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you so much to the organizers for inviting me to be here with you. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and it's super good to be after Alexander, because I can almost describe everything what he said. So my name is Carolina. I'm working for Dow Chemical. Dow is a multinational producer of material science, mostly chemicals and plastics. I'm working in the plastics division, 18 years in the industry. And I want to give you the perspectives here on plastic recycling, coming from a raw material producer who is starting our journey in the recycling industry. So I'm very happy to be here also, because I think we are going to be learning from each other. So let's start to why we should recycle. I hear from some panelists before myself, we should do this because of the targets. No, we should do this because of the business opportunity. And we should do this, as Alexander said, because it's not only good for the business, it's good for all of us and for the planet. And why is that? The targets are there to help us to enable the business and not the other way around. And there is a tremendous business opportunity for plastic recycling in Turkey and globally. Why we need to recycle? This is a study, and you can find the link there. It's public. It was commissioned to Systemic IQ 3 years ago. And it's the only study in the world that is combining for the plastics industry two visions, circularity and net zero. Because the ultimate goal as a society should be investing in clean technologies to achieve net zero, to fight climate change and be able to live good in this planet, right? That's the ultimate vision goal. And to get there, this report is saying that to achieve in Europe a plastics industry vision by 2050, the industry, the conversion plastics industry, will need to be using 70% of non-fossil sources to produce plastics. 70%. Half of the chunk will need to come from recycling. Mechanical recycling, chemical recycling, and other hybrid renewable technologies of recycling like dissolution. So what this is saying is that recycling is a key lever to fight climate change in the world. The other two levers, which are smaller, are around bio-based residues to be used as well to produce plastics, and carbon capture and use. Utilize carbon sequestration for the atmosphere to produce new plastics. So where we are right now, right? So we need to get there, and it's a long journey. So where we are starting, and this is data as well published unofficially by Plastics Europe, just to set the thing in Europe and in the rest of the world, because let's put the things a little bit in perspective. Today, around 20% of the 54 million metric tons per year of plastics produced in Europe are already coming from circular sources. Mechanical recycling, chemical recycling, bio. And you may say, that's good, right? 20% is already quite good enough. It's very small. And globally, the share is marginal. It's much less than 5% globally. So it's a long journey to get to the 70%, right? And it's a tremendous business opportunity to create new businesses and growth, decoupling the growth of this business from the fossil resources extraction. Great, we have an opportunity. So what about the holistic view. And I agree with Hermes, let's put the things in perspective because geopolitics these days are tricky for saying something. So put yourself here in the global production, so you have global mechanical and chemical recycling capacity installed in the total world. So around 37 million metric tons, 2023. Out of that, half of the tank is installed in China and in Southeast Asia. So they have moved fast. They are controlling the capacity in the world. 20% is installed in Europe, in the European area, and Middle East Africa is having 7%. Turkey will be in this 7%. Turkey has a great installed capacity for mechanical recycling. If you compare with the total production that you have in the country, it's already massive, the investment that you did as a country. But more can be done. Because in Europe, only 27% of plastics get recycled. Oh, Carolina, this is very good, 27%. No, this means that 70% or more are lost for circularity and are landfill and incinerated, totaling for 24 million metric tons of collected plastic wastes in Europe that are today lost for circularity. This is the business opportunity. In Turkey, around 10% are being recycled and few is being collected still. So more to be done in our region together. And somebody was saying we have a lot of legislation in Europe. Hermes, yes, I agree, we have a complex framework in Europe. But I agree with Alexander, it's good. The majority of the framework is good. Can be simplified, yes, but the policy is enabling the business case feasibility. Having targets, recycled plastics content targets at mandatory level for all plastics products, packaging, automotive, textiles, consumer goods, tires, mattresses. This is the case in Europe. For packaging, approved. For automotive, proposed, coming to be approved next year. For building and construction, before 2030. For all the rest that I mentioned, before 2030, between 27 and 2030. And you may be saying, that's super complex. That will make the business case possible and will create value opportunities for recycled plastics in high-performance markets, which you might not be selling so much today because the markets are not yet technologically ready or able to pay the premiums of those recycled resins because they will be more expensive because more steps will need to be done to produce those qualities. But this is where the value lies. So policies are helping. And in that sense, globally, in those discussions with the Global Instrument for Ending the Plastics Pollution that you refer, Hermes, is an amazing opportunity, and hopefully we are landing in a common agreement August this year in Geneva, to get national mandatory circular plans in all countries in the world with mandatory recycle and circular targets. Of course, different, because every country has different state of the art of where we're starting as a point, but needs to be always finalized. So this is the timeline, this is the effort, let's get the industry growing. So what Dow is doing, let me just make a little bit of what we are doing. What is our vision? And it's a modest vision because we are raw materials virgin producers. So we are learning how to play in this market. That's why our conversations with all of you here are so instrumental. So we have a strategy around circularity that is forming 5 pillars, very, I would say, synthetically. We started with all materials innovations that we have been developing with partners in the past 20 years to make possible technically recyclability. So how you redesign a plastic product from the current multi-material structure that has a reason. It's not that we want to make things complex. They are complex for a reason, for performance. How we can redesign maintaining the performance, but making those polymers combinations more compatible with recycling. There is a lot of innovation behind that code and a lot of R&D projects. We have a lot of solutions in commercial reality. Second piece, mechanical recycling. We are exploring specific strategic partnerships to try to target high-value performance markets in combination of one-step compounding, huge purity of the mechanical advanced processes to be washing and having those preparations together with materials knowledge science that we have to incorporate performance boosters, because you want to increase the use of recycled plastics in high-value applications, you need to do some boosting of the performance to compensate that. Chemical recycling, Alessandra was mentioning, yes, we are, of course, having a specific program for investments with partners. We announced Miura, we announced Plastogas, Nexus, and New Hope Energy. The slide is not up to date because 1.5 months ago, we announced a new one, which is called X-Cycle, to be constructed a plant in the Netherlands to be operational by end of next year. So this is ongoing. Of course, it's a beginning of a journey because we need legal certain clarity that is about to come in Europe before year-end, before end of this year, to make sure that those investments are happening. Physically recycling or distribution, we are exploring. It's a very initial state-of-the-art technologies. We're just exploring how we are going to be getting there. We signed a memorandum of understanding with Procter & Gamble along those lines. And bio, we have a range of bio-based polymers based on biomass residues to enable as well those companies that they want to incorporate those bio-based plastics, reducing fossil plastic utilization and providing carbon footprint benefits. And with that, my ending will be that it's all about technology and innovation. Value is linked with investments and technology innovation. This is our vision, and we are very much happy to discuss with everybody that is sharing that vision with us. It's all about how we can partner together. The linear value chain, everybody was speaking only with the supplier and the customer. This is history. Now in the circular value chain, everybody needs to speak with each other because new consortia are formed, as Alessandra mentioned before. And it's all about how we make policies enabling the growth and not the other way around, blocking the growth. So how really we use policies to really make it happen. And EPR is a phenomenal instrument in an eco-modulated way linked to giving bonuses to guys or companies that are doing the right thing, incorporating recycled content. That's just one, for example, idea among many others that we are pitching in the global treaty and in the national schemes to make the things happening, as well in Turkey, because we have a presence in Turkey, of course, with a sales office and a plant and team doing the work over here with local partners. So I'm happily representing as well the team here. And with that, thank you so much for your attention, and we'll stay connected.
Thank you very much. I will actually be looking at these different factors during my presentation, so look forward to that. First of all, thank you for having me. I want to thank the organizers for all their support in putting together this event. It's a pleasure to be part of such a great panel today. So I'm Carolina Perujo Holland. I'm a senior analyst at ICIS. And today I'm going to give a brief overview of the current state of play for the recycled polymer markets and our future outlook. So first of all, who is ICIS? So we provide pricing, data and analytics for key commodities worldwide in the energy and chemicals industry. Sustainability is a huge part of our business, so we look to support all of you, the entire chemicals value chain, in achieving your sustainability agendas as well. But now going into the recycled polymers market. So I think, as you heard today, the industry has been facing a lot of market challenges, a lot of uncertainty. And here I brought up a few different drivers impacting the industry. We've seen a lot of competition between sustainability agendas and that prioritization of management of costs. So just to look at a few of them here, we've seen regulation is a key driver for the industry. However, it's been quite slow. And what I mean here is that there's still a lot of lack of clarity around measurement and the enforcement of regulation. So there's a lot of uncertainty around that expected demand for recycled polymers, which is really impacting the industry and investment in the industry and that progress that we would like to be seeing. Around voluntary brand commitments, we see there's a lot of shift now to looking at net zero. It's not so much just recycling targets, it's around that sustainability net zero approach. Unfortunately, again, because of macroeconomics, we've seen some brands have to delay or revise some of those recycled content targets, adding again to that uncertainty. Looking then at the fragmented nature, I think we were speaking about that today as well. Every market is very different, and when we talk about fragmentation, that's in terms of legislation, implementation, collection rates, sorting rates, recycling rates, adoption of recycled content as well. So it's very different profile for every different market. Competitive ability of Europe, we mentioned this as well. We have seen now that European recyclers are really struggling because of high production costs, high feedstocks costs in Europe with trying to compete with the imported prices in other regions. As well, talking about tariffs, trade flows, we've seen logistics issues and freight costs really challenging some of those trade flows more recently. And then low prices of virgin polymers. I think this has really come to light more recently, where buyers of recycled material have really had to question how much they can sustain those higher prices for recycled material, again, given that focus on cost management. And then finally, securing high quality feedstock. So this is one of the reasons why in Europe we're challenged to see any real decrease in recycled polymer prices to help, again, with that competition with virgin material. It's not so much only about securing feedstock, but then maintaining that quality, because we have seen yields changing as well over time. So then, taking into account all these different drivers and trends, how does ICIS see the recycled polymers market in 2050? So just to walk you through these charts, they're quite complex. We have 3 different charts here, each representing a different region. So we have North America, Europe, and Northeast Asia. The blue bars represent total consumption expected in 2050 for each of the polymers. So here we're looking at polyethylene, polypropylene, and polyethylene terephthalate, so PET. And then the green bars show the expected production volumes for recycled material via mechanical recycling in those domestic regions. And as you can see, looking at the penetration rate, so in the black numbers, compared to the blue numbers, which represent 2024 penetration levels, we expect these numbers to grow. So there is growth expected between now and 2050. However, I've put a caveat up in the title to say, however, it's still limited. And what I mean by that is, given the ambitious targets that we have are being announced via voluntary commitments, but also via legislation, we still have a ways to go. And I think here we really need to consider economics and how that really impacts the rate of progress of the industry. And then zooming into Europe, just as a case study. So here we have the EU packaging and packaging waste regulations. I've highlighted a few of the recycled content targets and reuse targets that have been set for 2030 and 2040. Now, this regulation does impact Europe or the European Union, but I think it's a regulation that many markets outside the EU are also looking and monitoring. It came, as one of my fellow panelists mentioned today, it was passed into law earlier this year. However, again, there's still a lot of concerns around the packaging and packaging waste regulation. These are very ambitious targets, not just impacting PET, but all polymers. We also currently in Europe don't have an EFSA food contact solution for polymers that are not PET. And then reuse targets, this is something new. This will impact the value chain. It's not easily implemented with the current value chains that we have. It requires investment and new infrastructure. And then finally, the chemical recycling status. Can chemical recycling contribute to meeting those targets? And also, what mass balance approach will be used to be able to measure this? So then, how is the EU progressing against these different targets? I've taken here PET as an example. Again, we have 2 different charts. On the left, we have 2030, and on the right, 2040 data. The purple bars show the total expected consumption for the PET or impacted applications of PET by the PPWR in 2030. The blue bar is the amount of mechanically or recycled material that we will need to meet those targets. And then the green shows what ICS's view is for mechanically recycled material in 2030. The dark blue showing the same, but for chemically recycled material. Again, this is domestic production. So it seems here from the different charts that for 2030, we're at a good point to meet those targets. And 2040, however, will be a bit of a challenge. However, I want to really highlight 2 caveats. I think the first is that the green bar here shows mechanically recycled material. Not all of this is food contact approved. And this is really something to keep in mind when we think about PET and the main end-use applications. And second of all is that we also have to consider voluntary commitments, often going beyond the regulatory targets. And these will also put additional pressure on the available material on the market. So it seems that EU will probably have to look beyond just the EU to be able to meet these targets if things stay as they are. So what does all of this mean for pricing? So here, what I've done is I've taken yearly average spreads. This is the difference between recycled PET food-grade pellet material and virgin PET material. So when the bar is above zero, it means that recycled PET costs more than virgin PET. On the left, we have Europe, and then on the right, we have, on the light blue is US, and in purple, we have Asia. And I think what's really interesting here is that since 2011, recycled PET has cost more than virgin PET, and this has been sustained since then. But I think what I really want to highlight is that the US is sort of mirroring what happened in the EU, but at a bit of a lag. So if you look at 2019 in Europe, we saw a big increase here in that spread. And on the right-hand side, in 2023, you see a similar uplift in the US. And this was driven by regulation. In 2019, the Single-Use Plastic Directive was passed into law in the EU, where we had recycled content targets set for PET bottles in 2025 and bottles in 2030. And then in 2023, in the US, 5 different states set packaging recycled content targets. Again, this is not a federal mandate, it's very much driven on a state level, but it had an impact on prices. Asia is slightly different. Again, legislation is very fragmented, but we saw that initiative from recycled PET producers to target overseas markets, given these recycled content targets that industry had to meet. And I think what this here highlights is that with that regulation and with those targets, these spreads or this uplift above virgin, that increases and those premiums can be achieved, but also that influence or that direct impact with virgin PET prices in this case, but we saw this also in recycled PE and recycled PP as well, that decreases. So there still is that influence between virgin and recycled prices, but it's not a direct impact. And then my last slide, again, just looking again at prices. So feedstock is often one of the most volatile parts of the production costs when we look at recycling. Volumes depend very much on what us, the consumers, produce, what industry produces, and waste needs to be managed. So removing that, so here now we're looking at that spread or that delta between recycled material and that bale cost. On the left-hand side, this is blow molding natural pellets, so a packaging suitable grade. And on the right-hand side, we have pipe grade black pellets, generally not going into packaging applications. And as you can see, the spread is very different. Again, regulation. Regulation is allowing these spreads or these higher premiums on prices. When we look on the right-hand side, these non-packaging grades that don't yet have regulation or legislative targets set for you to use recycled content, these grades are still being traded predominantly on a cost-saving basis. So they are very much monitoring what's happening in the virgin market. So although it's not a direct impact, we do still see virgin prices acting as a sort of ceiling. So when we look recently at the different spreads here over the past few years, it's not a margin chart exactly, but when we consider that conversion cost can be between 400 and 500 euro per ton, the non-packaging market has really been suffering with squeezed margins more recently. So I think here what I want to conclude is that we can really expect those packaging grades that are impacted by regulatory targets to continue having these higher prices. So this is my last slide. I'm going to finish. I think there's just one more left. There you go. This is just a list of all our sustainability products. So all these products here can help support you in achieving your sustainability agendas. And if you're interested, please do reach out. We're a chatty bunch, love to talk about recycling. So please do. And with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much. So since I have, I think, 1 minute, what I've decided to do is to resume what we've done. Okay? And now I will finish also with the textile very quickly. Anyway, I will go first. I'm going to resume what we have said, because as I said, we don't have much time. First of all, what are the main problems in global plastics? I will go to AI later on and all those things, because it's one of the most important AI and sorting and all the new sensors are maybe the most important issue of recycling. There is no other issue than collection and sorting. Technologies, we have plenty of technologies. Everybody has pyrolysis, everybody has everything. So that's not an issue. Now, the recycling rates in worldwide is about 9% of plastics. So only 9% are not recycled. This is due to the fact, mostly because there is no collection and no infrastructures, no matter what. Even in Europe, every infrastructures are different. It doesn't make any sense. We so-called have an EU, European Union, but everybody's doing something different. The French are saying that the Germans are stupid, and the Germans are saying the French are stupid. So we don't have a common issue. So we cannot even, amongst ourselves, export anything. That applies for textile too. Okay, nobody is collecting textile. So whatever textile we collect, we don't know what to do with it, because you need scale. There is no scale anywhere for textile, but I will come back on that. Okay, so collection is the most important thing that we have. That thing. The other thing is contamination and quality issues. Mixed plastics. Okay, eco-design. Now people still tell you that the product is designed for recycle. You all know it's not true. So this is something we're going to have to again address. Multi-layered packaging is still an issue, but we still need barriers. If we don't have barriers, it's not going to work. Inadequate sorting system, I just said that. We do not have the right adequate system. And you know, we were speaking about EPRs. Basically in PET, we were terribly unhappy about EPRs. And you did the same in Turkey. You know what we did? Because we weren't happy with EPRs. We decided to ask for deposit, because we had an example in Germany, which was a very good, very, very good example. So EPRs are good to an extent. After that, you need to give a price to the material. If you don't give a price to the material, it's not going to work. Same for textile. You know, textile now in Europe is becoming what the next thing to collect. And they want to make a copy-paste of the EPR packaging to the EPRs for textile. It's not going to work. If you do not rebuy the textile, people are not going to, they're just going to throw it away, and it's not going to be the deposit effect or the take-back effect, because in this case it would be a take-back effect in the shops. Huh? Economic viability, that is another issue that we spoke about. Virgin is often cheaper than recycled plastic as oil, and is getting more and more expensive, especially in Europe. So economical viability is a problem. We were speaking about chemical recycling earlier on. How is it possible to have a 50,000 ton chemical recycling plant, which is going to cost you 100 million euros? Where are the economics? So we have a real problem. We have a real problem. So we have to be very careful to mechanical recycle as much as we can. It is a lot cheaper. Okay? And we have to remember that there was cogeneration is very interesting also, but the problem is CO2 today. We cannot go back on CO2. Cogeneration, unfortunately,
consumes a lot of CO2. So we cannot come back. Today we're stuck with depolymerization, maybe pyrolysis, and mechanical recycling. So we cannot come back. There's no way. And of course, this lack of standardization, I always come back, and harmonization in Europe. Those are really the four main problems that we have in Europe. Low recyclability rate, contamination and quality issues, economic viability, and lack of harmonization. If we do not manage to do all that, it's just not going to work. Now, the trends, they're the most interesting, but those are the easiest. The recycled content mandate, that is number one. If we do not go to recycled content mandates, if it's not mandatory, nothing's going to work. Textile, packaging, we know it's working for packaging. Yeah? Eco-modulation, of course. Eco-modulation is very important for eco-design. And of course, after eco-modulation, eco-design. And now we come to the sorting. The trends in sorting is fantastic. Now what we have nowadays, we really have AI plus fantastic sensors, plus coordinations between the sensors and the AI. This is where now we have no more excuse. I think we don't have much more excuse. The states will have to regulate as much as possible. But if possible, in good harmony. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. Now, very quickly, I'm not going to go for textile. See, I've been 5 minutes, sorry. I'm going to go very quickly into something for textile, because textile, the main problem is the following. Voilà. The main problem is the following. Textile is subject to fast fashion and to ultra-fast fashion. All the regulators will tell you now, you have to reuse. Textile is to reuse, but the problem is, I don't know, not in Turkey, but in Europe, definitely, we cannot reuse the ultra-fast fashion. So all this is piling up and piling up as much as possible, and we cannot export Global South. Global North cannot export Global South anymore because you have the Chinese, which are selling new material at cheaper price unused than whatever we can collect in Europe. So that doesn't work. So what are we doing in PETCO Europe? By the way, PETCO Europe, you have to know, is the value chain, the PET value chain since 1993. When you have a problem, we have the solution, because you have the value chain from the producers down to the glue manufacturer, down to the cork manufacturer, the caps manufacturer. So this is the value chain, okay? So we have an action plan for textile. Also, I've been in the PET business since 1992 as a recycler also, an executive director of PETCO and vice president of PRE, Plastic Recyclers Europe. So since we have this big issue, there is something new now. It's to prioritize polyester textile in the ESPR. And not to say that reuse is that good, is that reuse is that good, is not good enough anymore. It's just as simple as that. Reuse is not working. 30% of the turnover of the suits, for example, they were sold before before the war between Ukraine and Russia. They were sold in the East, okay? But now it's not sold. Not even suits are sold anymore. So, and we're in the fast fashion, we're not as competitive as the Chinese, who is flooding Global South with their material, okay? So what we've decided to do, because somebody has to do it, is to call for the Commission for a crisis plan-driven. Fast track to digital product passport. A digital product passport is something absolutely unbelievable. Voilà. You see, this is going to be in a blockchain. Blockchain is part, by the way, of this modernization of the system. Because more and more, we want the detail of every product. Soon, we will need the detail also of every bottle, where it comes from, how did it go, Was it sold by Carrefour or God knows what, or Lidl, or, you know? So in any case, so you see, you have the material composition, organic, cotton, recycled, origin of material, digital passport. That is really going to be, that's a revolution in many ways for the Commission. Environmental footprint on the DPP. It's not on the label, okay? It's just, its product will have a digital passport, product passport. The label is going to be much more simple. This is for the consumer. This is for the industry, for the recyclers, for example. They have to know if we're going to have, if we have to know what sort of colorants, what sort of dyes, what sort of, is it possible? I'm not sure. I'm not sure, because whatever is going to be said in India, done in India or in China, good luck, good luck, good luck. Huh? Okay, I have a lot about this. I have recycled content also that I wanted. Okay, this is going to be implemented through a QR code and the blockchain, okay, and the standard GSI. So back to where I was. Yeah, textile ensuring EPR revenue director towards infrastructure and innovation, eco-design in contact. Usually, the problem with EPR is they spend a lot of money on communication and not enough on the business as such. So also for textile, it's not a very important issue. We have to prove that the mechanical recycling is easy. It's a lot cheaper. Because for a 20,000 ton plant, okay, it's going to be white cotton up, you maybe going to spend 10 million. So that's okay. Not 150, not 100 million for chemical recycling, depolymerization, and have only 50,000 ton or 20,000 ton. So we're going to have to install something. We have to create a model. Today, in textile, there is no model as such. Yeah, for virgin to virgin, but from post-consumer to depolymerization, there is no real model today. So we're going to have to ask to see how we can finance with the European Investment Bank some targeting some plants. Huh? Provide interim financial support because everybody's dying. You see, the collectors are dying because they don't know what to do. The European collectors, they don't know what to do with their textile that they have done because they cannot sell it to the global south. So they will have, we will have to provide. It's all very nice to have this EU scheme, but that's going to cost much more money than packaging. And believe me, I am there for the packaging since 1991, and I think that the regulation was 1992 or something like that. No, France was 1992 and Europe 1994. Huh? So anyway, provide interim financial support for the collectors, which are all dying in Europe for textile. This is for textile. Huh? It supports, of course, the development of one more EU-funded textile circularity pilot region. We're going to have to do it on a region and to have the scale to maybe go elsewhere. So anyway, I wanted to resume that because I don't think we have much more time. So here you go. Thank you very much for your
thank you.
patience.
Christian, thank you.